You talking to me?
We're live. We are live.
All right. Well, good morning. Some of this will be a repeat from what you heard this morning with Tim, because apparently we're on the same. We're just synced right up, and so I thought about maybe we'll just replace Tim's sermon, but I didn't want to do that either. There is some new stuff. Plus, the good news is that you get to participate in this class, which is really what makes it exciting and different, because I could sit over and tell you all about it just like Tim did, but then you'd hear another 30-minute boring sermon. I'm just kidding, Tim. Just kidding. So anyways, we're going to be in 3 and 4, obviously, you can see there. What do the stones mean? That's just picture I found to occupy the space. We don't need an answer to that. The humorous one comes in a few minutes. But, just going back a little bit to recap, Moses led his people out into the desert, did a 40-year camping trip. Could you imagine doing that for 40 years? Camping out in the desert. What's your permanent address? Oh, I'm one rock down south of the other one. I wonder if they had road runners back in those days. That'd been interesting. Anyways, 40 years around the desert. He's taking care of these people. He's training a lot of them. But the one person he's training really a lot is Joshua. He's teaching them all about the strategy of taking care of a bunch of people. He's teaching them all about military that word I couldn't say last week either. So strategy. There you go. Have no clue why. I guess when you get to a certain age, things just start to disappear, Memory happens to be one of them. So anyways, he learns this stuff, then they get brought to the point where they're at right now before the Jordan. Moses kicks the bucket. He's gone on, R.I.P., all that good stuff. Joshua now is told, you are going to take command of these people. Now, I don't know if you could, I tried to do this every time I read this, this isn't like a few hundred people. I think I shared with you last week, I was in the military. I was in the Army. I was a helicopter crew chief, electrician, door gunner, the whole 9 yards. Anything related to helicopter, that's what we did. And I was in charge of a company. I started out with a little squad of about 13 people. Then it went to a platoon of about 30-some people, and then it became a whole company where it was a couple hundred. Of course, you had other people underneath to help you, like Joshua did. He had officers and stuff like that. But it's overwhelming when you're in charge of just a couple hundred people. Even when I was doing my first communion years and years and years ago, we were at Jefferson High School, and out of nowhere, one of the elders come up and said, "Hey, can you do communion?" The guy left, and I said, "Sure." I had no clue I was going to be standing in front of 500 people. Believe me, standing in front of 500 versus standing in front of you right here is a whole lot different. 500 people looking back at you, that's pretty doggone intimidating. Joshua had millions of people, thousands and millions of people. It was huge. You got to get your mind around this. You got to think about this. What God's working with these people through Joshua, and obviously he's delegating some of this stuff. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about is similar to what Tim covered this morning, but we're going to dig a little deeper into it and just get your input on it. Here's one. My Uncle Carl encountered similar parting of the waters about 40 years ago at the Red Sea. Of course, that was all salt water, and this is fresh water. Very, very peculiar, right? Anyways, I don't know. It was the only Joshua joke I could find on images. Plenty of them written, but I like the one on images better. But here we're back in there. They're camping by the Jordan. And let me get somebody just to read the first couple verses for me, please. Anybody? Doesn't make it. And we got a runner. You want 3, 1 and 2.
I'll be glad to read. Crossing the Jordan. This is the NIV version.
Yep.
Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God, and the Levitical priest carry it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits between you and the ark. Do not go near it. Joshua told the people.
That's good. That's good right there. We'll stop
Okay.
there. Thanks for reading that much. I was going to stop you, but I figured I'll let you keep going. It's not good. Go back and just take a look at this. Early in the morning, Joshua. Early in the morning, Joshua, and all the Israelites set out for Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. They just got an early start doing this. Where else do we see in the Bible, whether it be old or new, where we read or know people getting up early in the morning to get started? Jesus. And whereabouts?
35.
What's that?
Mark 1:35.
And what was that in regards to?
He got up early in the morning and went to pray.
Pray. He got up. You didn't raise your hand and wait for the microphone.
Sorry.
2 points demerit for Beulah's side of the auditorium.
Abraham got up early in the morning to sacrifice Isaac.
Yeah, early in the morning.
Forgot about that.
There's something about this early morning stuff, right? I wish I could tell you all about the early morning. I'm awake most of the time, but nothing's functioning, I guarantee you that. Early morning, it's a good start, and apparently this was being commanded by God to Joshua, and Joshua obeyed on this. Joshua takes the initiative when he sent out spies to get more detailed information. He also rose early in the morning, which we've already talked about. But let me ask you, why do you think he took the initiative to send these spies out? And I know some of this we covered last week, but why did he send these spies out? Raise your hand. Irene.
Usually if someone, I don't know in particular about Joshua, but I think it falls along the same lines. If you send out spies ahead of time, it's because you want to know what you're up against.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Excellent. It wasn't something that God told him to do. Joshua just took the initiative. I honestly believe Moses had something to do with that. If he taught him all the military strategy and stuff like that, I would think that was his initiative to send them out across the Jordan, scope it all out, and I think he told him to go especially pay attention to for crying out loud, what's the city there? Jericho. Went to Jericho and especially pay attention to that. So it's all about the strategy. And then, again, we talked about Joshua rose early in the morning in the first giving orders to the people when you see the ark. Okay, so early in the morning, Joshua, all the Israelites set out to Shittim and went to Jordan where they camped before going across. After 3 days, the officer went through the camp giving orders to the people and so on. So if you were looking at just these few verses that we read so far, what are some of Joshua's characteristics or character could you draw from that about Joshua?
Pre-planner.
He pre-planned things?
Pre-assessor.
Okay, good. What else?
He leads by example.
Leads by example. Very good. I had one the first time I thought about it. He's just a doer. I mean, he just goes and does things. What else? What are the characteristics?
Joshua obeys God because he's already seen before what happens if, he was a part of that group that was going around for 40 years. He knows that, okay, we need to follow this to the letter because we don't want to go for 40 years again.
Right. Very good. Pamela? Pamela?
I was just going to say, he doesn't hesitate.
No,
God tells him to do something, and he does it immediately. He doesn't hesitate.
he's very obedient. He just gets up and goes. Let me ask you a question. You don't have to raise your hand to answer this. If you had a job to do Do you wait until the last minute, or do you get it done right away or procrastinate? Yeah, I see back this. Like, depends on what it is. If I'm going to Busch Gardens, I can get up early in the morning. If I got to mow the yard, I got news for you. It could wait a week or two.
I too, like he was a crew chief,
Uh-huh.
crew fighters. So when I had a job to do, I knew when I come in to work, when I come on shift, I go get my toolbox, I get my tools. I've already known that my aircraft is flying, that probably when it comes down, I'm gonna have to change the tires because it's already had a lot of sorties already.
Right.
I already know that I'm gonna have to do a pre-flight or a BPO inspection. I'm gonna have to do all this stuff. So I make sure that when I come in, I get everything that I need. If I have to help somebody else, let's go get it done. Let's get it over and let's do it. Because when it's time to go home, I'm ready to go home, and I don't want to be out here all night
Right,
till
right.
5 o'clock in the morning working on the aircraft.
Very good. Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought much about that. I'd be in bed sleeping, sound in my little bunk, and all of a sudden my phone would go off, and there's a warrant officer and the other that said, hey, we're flying. And it's up and ready we go. We got to get it. Here's God saying, Joshua, you got to get up and go. And Joshua didn't wait. He just got up and he went. And I think there's so many things that we can learn from Joshua's characteristics that we can apply to our own lives and be challenged by it. And maybe say, maybe that's something I need to change. But God did tell Joshua to do certain things, and this is what he did. Let's see. Oh, yeah. The people set out before they knew how they would get there. They were just going back. In Joshua 1:11, the people were told. In one section, they were told, and then in 3:11, they set off and ended up camping right next to where they're supposed to be. There we go. How far did you go, Irene? Did you get down to 5? Okay, let me get somebody to read 5 through 8. 5 through 8. Go ahead. Wait a minute. Hold up.
Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. Joshua said to the priests, take up the Ark of the Covenant and press on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river.
Good, thanks. All right, some of this you already heard this morning. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate you doing that. Covered half my lesson. That's the challenge. We're trying to race to see who can get to the information first. Not really. This is one of the things I looked at. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things. What does this consecrate mean? Why they got all these big words in the Bible? What does that mean? Why was that important? Certainly I couldn't be the only one that went, back there.
Okay, the Webster Dictionary meaning. Make or declare something make or declare sacred. Dedicate formally to a religious or divine purpose. The present Holy Trinity Church was consecrated in 1845. I'm just reading the dictionary meaning.
It's okay, it's a Webster one, so it's got to be official.
It says ordained to a sacred office, typically that of bishop.
All right, good deal. Somebody else got input. What's the meaning behind this consecrate, or why would this even be important? You know, they're getting cleaned up. Did you have a hand up over here? Yeah, okay. Okay.
Sanctify.
Sanctify, okay.
Sanctification.
All right. Clean up. It was important. They're going into a new land. I don't know exactly, but they were told to do it, so they did it. And the consecrate means they just clean themselves, wash the garments, abstain from all sexual activity and stuff like that, going into somewhere new. Frank?
So we know that we're talking about the Jews here. I'm sure they had ceremonies that they had to fulfill and duties and rites that they had to perform in order to consecrate themselves.
Yep, very good. Excellent. The other thing about this is, I thought the second part really was interesting. For tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. I thought, man, I don't know, I'd get excited because I got to get cleaned up, sanctify myself, get ready to go in here. I'm going to see the Lord do amazing things. I'd be excited about seeing what's to come. What about you? Same thing? And then we go in here and it says, Joshua said to the priest, take up the ark, covenant, pass on ahead to the people so they can take it. We talked about this being about like 1,000 yards ahead of it, and reasons for that. I don't know if it's any kind of legality thing there, but again, if they were real close, people in the back definitely wouldn't see where this ark is at. I mean, it just couldn't. It'd be too close to everybody. But then the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you. Why do you think the Lord told Joshua, today I'm going to exalt you in the eyes of Israel, so they may know I'm with you as I was with Moses? Why do you think that was so important?
So he would know that everybody was behind him, and if the Lord is for you, who could be against you?
Okay, good.
So we already know that like sometimes the Israelites and even us as like humans, we kind of need signs that, hey, this person is for real. Like you know that they have power behind them, behind you or behind them.
Very good. Down front, Gary, or over there.
I would think because faith is now, I think he was trying to help him to establish that faith in me, displayed right now, is going to be foundational for you and the rest of the followers.
Okay, good.
I think it's a repetition, but Moses had great credibility among his people.
Right.
They came to him for everything, as legal issues or saving issues or food or whatever. And now, after Moses is gone, who is this Joshua?
Mm-hmm.
This was a personal commitment from God to Joshua that, he's going to be the one who's going to lead.
Right.
Moses knew about it, but 600,000 people did not. So it's a credibility. It was establishment of, and the next line says that as he was with Moses, so people would know.
Very good. Excellent. Over there. I was going to say same thing. Same thing? Yeah, think about it right behind you.
Yeah, it points the finger to God and not necessarily to Joshua. For Joshua to make these claims that God wants us to do this, God wants us to do that, I'm doing this because God said it was, and then everyone's looking at him as if to say like, well, what you're telling us is coming from you. And he says, no, it's not coming from me. This is coming from the Lord.
Absolutely. If you go back to the very beginning of time, we'll go back there. Before the beginning of time.
I just want to say one more thing.
Okay.
I wonder also if Joshua needed it himself. Sometimes like we wonder if, hey, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? So this would have been a sign like, hey, yes, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're doing it right.
Very good. Excellent. Yeah, if you step back a little bit in time, excuse me, God gave Moses all this power, and the people there saw it. He let them out in there. He saw the flaming tornado thing or whatever you call it. They saw God give Moses the power to part the Red Sea. They saw all this. Moses dies, Joshua takes over. What are the people seeing about Moses, about Joshua so far? And this is exactly what God's doing, is saying, look, I'm going to exalt you in the eyes of these people. He's going to give them authority. I remember when I was in service, when I first became company commander, the major was actually the commander. I was kind of like his gopher, I guess. But he came out and he says, look, whatever Don tells you to do, Actually, they called me Sergeant DEW. I don't have a clue how that got started. When he gives you the command, it's like it's coming from me. He's got all the authority to tell you what to do. And this is what's taking place here. God's telling Joshua, I'm going to do this so these people know it, just like I set the example for them back in Moses' time also.
Yeah, Tim brought it out in his sermon that the parents of the group that Joshua was leading have all died. Right. And the group that Joshua was leading are people who have never seen all of the things that God did. So it's even more reason why he has to establish that authority.
All right, excellent point. Yeah, all these prior parents and grandparents, they're all dead. They don't know what's taking place with that. Did you have one? No, okay. So then it goes on, it says, tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's water, go and stand in the river. Tim talked about that this morning. If you've ever seen it, this river is virtually next to nothing during, low tide, if you call it that. Then when it's high tide, this thing's a raging, everything's melting, coming down. This water goes up, it comes through. And I thought it was kind of interesting in here. I circled it somewhere. Oh, it's over in 16, 15, yeah, in 16. The water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap, great distance at a town called Adam. I don't know if anybody ever caught that or looked at that, and I just thought, isn't that interesting? It stopped right there at Adam and started to build way up. I don't know if it had anything to do with Adam and Eve part, but I just thought, that's interesting. But the thing is the minute the priests got to the water's edge, stepped into that water, things just started to happen. What God told Joshua, now he's demonstrating the power. So Joshua said to the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you. I find it kind of interesting, after all the things they've been through, Joshua still has to remind them about the living God. Like, God's disappeared after you've seen all this stuff so far. But the living God is among you, and he will certainly drive out the Canaanites and all these other Hittites, termites and stuff like that out there. See, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 men and the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who carry the Ark of the Lord of the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at flood stage during the harvest. Yet as soon as the priest who carried the ark reached the Jordan, their feet touched it, the water started to pile up at Adam there. If you jump down a little bit in 17, it says, the priest who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan while all of Israel passed until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry land. This is, I don't know, anybody been out around Bayshore at low tide and you see the ground out there? Not only is it mushy, but it stinks. I mean, they're doing a good job of cleaning it up, but it's not dry. I mean, I've been out, I forget where it was at. Maybe it's Fort DeSoto where at low tide you can walk a long ways out. I've been at beaches where you could walk out to the little sandbars and stuff, but it's not dry. This is dry. I mean, where else do you read about waters parting and the land was dry? Red Sea. Same thing. They see the same power over again. And all this is doing is, one, they're seeing that God's alive. He's still in control. He can do all these amazing things. And at the same time, it's giving Joshua all that power. God's saying, you are in charge, and the people are seeing this. And they have to see it. There's over 1 million people there. A lot of people. And think about this. We're getting into crossing the Jordan here in 4. Think about that for a minute. 1 million people. The water started piling up at Adam. How far down do you think that went? How far down did it have to go for 1 million people to cross over? and all of them crossed on dry land. That's just, I don't know, it's so hard to wrap your mind around things like that because you never see that kind of stuff. I've seen creek beds that the water stopped flowing and over years it dried up, but not just instantly. And these people are seeing this stuff, and this is giving a lot of credibility to Joshua. I did all that. So let me ask you these questions right here real quick. You can raise your hand or you can blurt it out as long as you yell it loud enough to make it on the audio. What did the officers tell the people? Joshua told these people, told the officers to go through the crowd, and what did he tell them to do?
When they see the priests move the ark, they're supposed to follow.
Exactly. And he sent, again, we do this. Think about this. 1 million some odd people, all these officers are running through the crowds, telling them, hey, when you see the priest move, you got to get ready to go. And we're going to do this in 3 days. What's the significance of this? Well, we did talk about that today and last week. How were the people to prepare themselves for this? And this is in verse 5. We kind of covered that. What do we learn about God from this message? And what you're reading here, what do we learn about God from this message?
Well, one of the things you learn about him is that he's true to his word.
True to his word. Yeah, because he told these people beforehand what was going to happen, didn't he? And now it's coming to pass.
Well, God has got power over the environment. I mean, he can make the water stop.
Yeah. What else? What else did we learn about God from this? Behind you, Gary.
He is the Savior of his people.
Very good. Very good. Let's go to the next one. What do we learn that we can apply to our lives today? Out of what you've read here, the things that took place, how can we apply this to our lives?
So I've talked about this story in school before, and one of the things that the professor brought up is that the Red Sea and this are right before they're about to take like a huge risk. That they're going into the wilderness. They're going into a new city that they've never been to before. The professor also said that it's kind of an I can't remember the word, like an imagery of baptism too. Before the New Testament and everything, they're going through water. Water makes things clean, makes them holy before.
Right. Very good. Excellent. So, what do we learn that we can apply to our lives today?
Well, one thing is God's not going to do everything.
Right.
The children of Israel still had to apply some effort to cross the river.
Very good.
The miracle was given, but we still have work to do.
Good, good. You know, I used to take, George asked me, I think I shared this with you, when George says, what do you want to teach on? So I'm real good with current events in the New Testament. He comes back and says, yeah, the book of Joshua would be real good for you to teach. I don't think that was in anything I said. What was it? George is getting up there in age, so maybe he didn't hear me really well. But you know, the thing is how many times have we taken the book of Joshua or anything in the Old Testament, really read it, looked at it, and say, how do we apply that to our lives today? Too many times I think we just say, that's the Old Testament. Our lives are all in the New Testament. And I got news for you. So much of what's said here, even Joshua, translation of his name or something, I forget how this works, translates over to Jesus, Jehovah. I mean, there's a correlation there somehow. I lost track of how to do that. But Joshua's kind of like the Old Testament Jehovah, and Jesus is the New Testament. So, I mean, there's a lot of correlation, a lot of things we can learn from that.
Yeah, what I can learn from this is that God always gives us an assignment. We have an assignment, and that assignment will not take place. The results of the assignment won't take place until we take a step in that process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, the next question is, what did the Lord tell the people? Why did the Lord tell the people ahead of time what would happen? Well, I think it's kind of interesting if you kind of got an idea of what's going to happen. You know, when I trained people in the past, I would tell them, you know, what we're going to do. And, you know, that way they have some expectation of what's going to happen, you know, as we go through it. And I think that's the same thing here. Jesus, God told these people what's going to happen, what you got to do. That way they had some expectation to it. Where in the New Testament did God tell us what to do? Yeah, go make disciples, baptize, and continue to teach. We've been given something to do, you know, and He's always going to be with us. I mean, that's some real comfort there. What kind of obstacles may we face in our own lives? Gary's getting his steps in today.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I mean, the obstacles we may face, I mean, trials, doubt, fear. God, are you really with me going through this? And like, again, going back to what Tim said, if we never cross that river, we'll never experience what God really has for us.
Okay. Did you have something?
Getting out of our comfort zone.
Okay, good.
Okay. Not everybody is fearless.
Okay. What other obstacles behind you over there? Boy, Ronnie's talking a lot today. I love this. This is great.
But I think that the biggest challenge I think God gives each of us today is to love Him with all of our heart, our soul, strength, and mind, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. In doing that, we fulfill all of God's law and all of His prophecies.
Yeah.
So that is the biggest, for me, that is the biggest challenge that I face moment by moment.
Very good.
I believe, excuse me, I believe our obedience to God, even when things look impossible, that is huge.
Good. Well, I'm at peace now because I thought she was going to say her biggest obstacle was me. So, behind you over there.
Even as a designated leader, you face opposition from those that are supposed to follow you. And sometimes it can be very disheartening. It can cause you to lose your focus.
Very good. Anybody else? Let's move on here. I don't know. I just thought this was humorous. Tribes of the Old Testament: Amorites, Midianites, and Samsonites. So. Well, there's a few that got it, so that's all right. All right, so let's go into chapter 4 here, because I know that's where Tim's supposed to be next week, so I got a head start on him here. But his message is different than mine a little bit. I'm looking at the practicality of putting it into our lives today. I get somebody to read Joshua 1 through 9 in chapter 4, please. Gary? Eric will read it.
When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe. Tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priest stood, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stayed tonight." So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord your God to the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be memorial to the people of Israel forever."
Thanks. Oh, wait a minute, 9. Go ahead.
So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua, and they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priest who carried the ark of the covenant had stood, and they are there to this day.
Very good, thanks. So we go back to the beginning there. It says, when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan. The whole, that's just, how long do you think that took? I mean, that, I don't know, that just blows my mind. I've seen large groups of people move. How many remember years ago when they had the million-man march up in D.C., prayer thing they did? I remember they had that a couple times. The streets were just flooded from all around. I mean, helicopters would hover over that, and it was amazing how many, and I don't know if they had 1 million or not, but there was a lot of people there. And so you got this whole nation of tons of people. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, choose these 12 men. I guarantee you he didn't choose men like me, just because of the size of stones they had to pick up. Think about this. From the middle of Jordan, from the right where the priest stood, and carry them over with you and put them down in a place where you stayed tonight. It just leaves kind of a lot of, where each one of them stayed, or in one place where all 12 of them stayed. I don't know. I'm guessing where all 12 of them had to stay because they had to put them all together. But this is what got me. Each of you take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of tribes in Israel. A stone on your shoulder. If it was, I've picked up stones, and no big deal, throw them in the water, throw them at my brother or sister. That was a lot of fun. But they were just little stones. These are picking up big ones on their shoulders. So they had to be a pretty good sized stone. I'm getting to a point on this in a minute. In the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the Ark of the Covenant. And the Lord, when it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. These are big stones piled up in an area to create a memory for future generations. I don't know, I was sitting there thinking about it. My son called yesterday from the Caymans, and they're trying to come up, and Rhea can't, they're having problems with her passport. It's so weird down there. She's from the Philippines, and the Philippine embassy only meets a couple times a year on the island, so she can't get a passport till they decide to come back. So he's calling us, we're keeping in touch. He may come up, and he had Catherine on the phone yesterday. He said, yeah, go to the front door, and I'm there. And he wasn't. Memories, creating memories. She'll never forget that. I guarantee you she'll never forget that. Neither will Michael when he gets here. But I got thinking, I've got things that from my father, things that I've kept, that he gave to me to help me remember him and the things he's done. How many in here would like to leave things for your children and grandchildren to remember you by?
But we have.
You have got it, right?
Not only do you need physical things, but you need mental and emotional things. My kids, their kids will remember to the day they die, please and thank you.
Right, right.
Because I always said, say it together. And I even have it posted in our house.
Yeah.
But it's those things that you leave, and God left us so many of those wonderful things to remember.
Yeah. How important are these things for our children and grandchildren? Even people that aren't related to it. I remember going to your house for dinner or lunch and all the fun things we had, getting together for the Halloweens and stuff like that. Believe it or not, I don't know how I remember some of these things, but they come and go. But the thing is that there are children small enough that didn't know this was going to happen. There's children who haven't even born yet that didn't know these things had happened. And a lot of these people crossing now had no idea, had nothing other than some people telling them about the Red Sea that parted, So these memory things are very, very important. These boulders was something that would spark their memory, that would get somebody to say, what did all these stones piled up for? And they were piled up.
Yeah, I was thinking about John the Baptist when he was baptizing people. and he was standing in the Jordan River, and he said, and do not begin to say to yourselves, we have Abraham as our father, for I tell you that out of these stones God can raise up children for Abraham. And I just wonder if he was pointing to those stones.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, could be. I mean, it doesn't say for sure, but good possibility. I don't think the stones went anywhere for quite a few years. They may not be there today, or if they are, maybe they're buried and they just haven't got to them yet. But, you know, these kind of things are very important. I think God tells us to do things so that to leave memories of how we live our lives today, to set the example for our children and grandchildren to come. These kind of memories.
And going along with what you're saying, going back to also what Tim was talking about, is I can't live off of your stories, I can't live off of your memories, but with you telling me what you overcame, what you went through, helps me to want to do that for myself after hearing what God did for you.
Right. I want to leave a memory that my children and grandchildren and whoever else can look back and say, you know, this is Don Stone. He served God, he loved God, and he helped everybody that he possibly could. That would be the memory I would like to be known for. And I think some of the memories, Don tells some dumb jokes. But a lot of these are purposely planted because they're all spiritually, you know, they all have a spiritual foundation. I want to be remembered that I love God. That's the memory I'd like to be remembered for. Those are the stones I want to put out there. We're going to pick up in 10 next week. So finish reading it. You know, I was sitting there thinking, if somebody asked me, if I got to heaven and started meeting people and he says, hey, I'm Obadiah, did you read my book? And I'm like, you had a book? I want to make sure I'm into the Word, into the Old Testament. Take some time, finish reading the next few chapters of Joshua. And again, think about some of these chapters and these verses you read and how it can relate to your life, what it might mean. What are some of the things that you see that affected you or you can relate to? Or something just stands out. That boulder stone thing, I never thought about that. And I never thought about Adam. The water stopped at Adam. I didn't know. I don't remember reading that. I probably won't forget it for a while. But these kind of things stand out. What stands out to you in the next couple chapters here, 4, 5, and 6? Take some time and read it. You got an entire week. There's no quiz. Have a great week. Let's end in prayer. Father, we thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much for the message we heard this morning from Tim. We thank you for this time that we can just share the word, the gospel, how it can affect our lives and things that we get out of what you've written. Help us this week to take some time out each morning and spend 5 or 10 minutes just reading your word, seeing how it can affect our lives today so that as we go out, we can affect the lives of tomorrow. We thank you so much for your Son, Jesus Christ, and it's in his name we pray. Amen.